This video is sponsored by Squarespace. It's been about a month since I bought the Leica M11-P, and in this video I thought I would share some more thoughts. Is the honeymoon phase over? I don't know. And will I still be biased? Probably. Let's talk about it. I'll also show you some of my favourite photographs that I've taken in the last 30 days using the camera as the video goes on. 99% of the month I've been shooting at 35mm with the Summilux that I bought along with the M11-P, but 2 days ago, TT Artisan actually sent me this 50mm as well. I'll have a play around with that and then report back. There is also a 28mm on the way too. So I've been shooting most of my photography at 60 megapixels. Just because it's a new camera, let me see what the quality looks like at full res. I don't think I need to continue shooting at 60, and for about 3 days in London, I did shoot at medium 36 megapixels. I might continue doing that. I didn't notice any image quality differences. I didn't notice, I wasn't pixel peeping essentially, so this isn't a detailed analysis of quality. This is just my user experience. Was it any better? The file sizes were a little bit smaller, so I think I'm probably leaning towards continuing to shoot at 36 megapixels. If anyone's got an M11 watching this video, please let me know what your approach is with this. Most of my images are just street stuff. I don't think I need 60, but is there much difference other than convenience? I'm not sure. So let me know what you think about that. I wanted to touch on the differences I found between the Q2 and the M11-P, because there might be some people on a similar sort of buying decision journey. They might be interested in just upgrading to a Q3 or maybe buying a Q for the first time, but they might also be interested in M-body. So let me just share my 2 pence and see if it helps. I will say that I'm pleased that I was manual focusing on the Q2 about 3 or 4 months before buying an M-body. Now this wasn't intentional. I didn't know for certain that I was going to buy an M-body camera. I just enjoyed the experience of manual focusing on the Q2. It just felt more tactile. And that then led me further on to thinking that buying an M-body would be a good idea. So I've kind of built up muscle memory a little bit. I already had some practice with distances and focusing manually. If you just go cold turkey from autofocus to manual focus, this experience might be a little bit difficult, but everyone's different. The M11 is way quicker to use. This isn't to say that the Q2 is slow and clunky, but it was slightly more temperamental than the M11 in terms of touchscreen usability, flying through the menu system, speed of camera in general. Now, this is only because I'm comparing it. If the M11 wasn't in the picture, the Q2 is a totally usable and great piece of kit. But picking up the M11, I feel like I'm definitely using a newer camera and it's noticeable. I would assume this goes kind of without saying, but the biggest differences here are obviously the autofocus versus manual focus, Q versus M, but then also the EVF versus the rangefinder experience. If you're using the screen on the back on the Q, great, but then you also pull the viewfinder up to your eye, it's just another small screen. And I don't really want to be looking at more screens, especially with Vision Pro coming out. I think we're gonna have a million screens around us all the time. Actually seeing the world as it is through a rangefinder is such an enjoyable experience. And yes, the difference between going from autofocus to manual focus is a pretty big step, but the actual user experience of a rangefinder itself, that viewfinder is so nice when doing street photography. Regarding manual focusing in general here, if you're someone going from an autofocus system to an M-body, only you can really answer that question and decide if it's going to work for you. And I said something similar in my M11 first impressions video. The manual focusing on the streets, whether you're critical focusing every time or just zone focusing, it's not as difficult and as daunting as it first appears. I've actually found myself to be a little bit more attentive, and anything that makes you more alert and present in the moment, because I have to be aware of my distances and I'm focusing on focusing, quite literally, I think that's a positive for the experience. As far as the things I'm looking for and the things I'm taking pictures of, absolutely nothing feels different about my approach from using the Q2 to the M11-P, and the photographs that come out the other end are all on me. I would just like to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this video, Squarespace. If you're a photographer that wants to take your business and your photography a little bit more seriously, then I cannot recommend Squarespace enough. They are essentially the best website at making websites. Squarespace has been my go-to platform for running my online business. I sell digital products on there. At the end of last year, I sold my book, which, by the way, is sold out right now. Thank you so much for everyone who ordered a copy of that. I used Squarespace to manage and sell and facilitate that product. I also write weekly blogs. I write an email newsletter every single week. Everything I do online for my business goes through Squarespace, and it is an absolute breeze. If you think creating a website is a little bit of a daunting process, you have to check out what Squarespace are doing. There are hundreds of templates to use from. The whole process is seamless, and yeah, I can't recommend them enough. So why not at least start a free trial? And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/MikeChudley to save 10% off a website or domain. Now let's get back to the video. I'm a big believer that the tools you use have an effect on how it feels to go out there and take photos. And in fact, gear does matter to a certain extent, and this is probably a conversation for a separate video, but I will emphasize I'm not talking about image quality here. I'm talking about user experience. I'm talking about everything that happens before you press the shutter button, because most modern cameras nowadays, they're gonna be fine. Image quality is gonna be fine. That's not the conversation we need to have anymore. But yeah, finding a camera or a piece of kit or a tool that fits your workflow and that you enjoy using is probably the most important part of this conversation. I guess my point here is that the M11P is certainly fitting in well with my approach and my workflow, just like the Q2 did for all of last year. Just quickly talking about the raw files, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but when I'm shooting in auto white balance, the raw files do pump out photos a little bit on the purple side. And most of my edits in Lightroom include me just sliding that tint slider over to the green to bring some more back. Just something I've noticed. The raw files also have a decent amount of contrast built into them, certainly more noticeable than the Q2 files did. And in my edits, I typically add some green in, like I said, either remove a little bit of contrast or at least lift the shadows a little bit. That seems to be my go-to corrections when editing. Just quickly touching on battery life now, the USB-C charging is a very much welcomed addition. Most of my devices now are USB-C, so it's very convenient. I've not even used the battery charger at all because I just plug the USB-C in from my laptop and charge from there. So that's great. I also have 2 batteries for the M11P. One battery is typically enough, but there's been a few occasions, maybe a longer day of street photography, I'm taking more photos than usual, and the second battery does come into play. So I'm pleased I have 2. I don't think I'll need to get 3 at any point, and if I do run out of charge, I have USB charging if I need to, which is convenient pretty much wherever I am. So yeah, battery life, very good. The one M11P battery is certainly more noticeably better than the one Q2 battery. I would fly through 2 Q2 batteries most days of street photography, but yeah, not with the M11P, it's very good. On the subject of my settings and my go-to setup, I'll probably do a more in-depth video on this in a couple of months' time once I've dialed in and tweaked some of my go-to settings. I will say I shoot pretty much in auto ISO and then I adjust the shutter speed and the aperture depending on the situation. I have maxed my auto ISO to 6400. I just find that that's the threshold of any higher than that is too much noise, personally. A little side note here, I have never had so many compliments about the camera around my neck than with the Leica M11P. Even more so than the Q2. People didn't really ever say much about that camera, but if I'm in the queue for something or if I'm ordering coffee or just any random exchange with a stranger, they seem to just add on at the end, hey, nice camera, that looks cool. I don't know what that's worth. I don't even know why I'm mentioning it in this video, but it seems to be almost every time I go out and take photos, someone will just briefly say, hey, that looks cool. So that's worth something for the ego. I want to be super honest with you guys about something to finish this video. And this has happened to me 1 or 2 more times than I would like to admit. And let's say I just pull the camera out of my bag. I'm about to take my first photo of the day. I pull the camera to my eye like this. I get my focus, sounds good. And then someone else next to me, a friend, will point out that my lens cap is still on. Yes, that has actually happened like 6 times in the last 30 days.